Hey everyone, welcome back. So today we are going to look at a extension of the timer chop um, in a way that will make it a little bit more configurable. So for example, let's say that we wanted to build a media player that was going to take an image, or a movie rather, fade the movie in, show a title overlay for a little bit, play the entire movie, and then fade the movie out. Um, there needs to be a time for the fade, a time for the title to stay on, the movie duration, and a time for the fade out to begin. Now, we could use a bunch of timers to do that and have kind of each of them for each of those specific events. But that gets pretty unwieldy, and there is a better way to do it. So I am going to drop a movie file in. I'm going to go to just a random video that I have. I'll use this butterfly. And we will do a couple things to give us some functionality to use. So I'll drop a text. We'll call it butterfly. And then I'll move my text over here. Okay, so that'll be our title, butterfly video. Obviously not being super precise with that. And then we will want a fade, which we can use the level for. And so now, if this is our video, we can use the font alpha to fade in and out our video. We can use the opacity here to fade, to fade it on a title. We can use the opacity of the level to fade in and out the video. And I'll just give us a black screen for when the video fades out completely. And so now we can set up our timer. So let's say this is what I want to do. Not a text. This is what I want to do. I want to start movie with fade. 2 seconds. I want to have my movie fully in. 3 seconds. I want to have my title start. Let's say I want to have last for 5 seconds. And then 5 seconds, 2 seconds. Before the end, I want it to fade out. So to do that with our single timer, we are going to use a table DAT, and we're going to call this segments. Now, segments DAT, you can just right click on the row, on the column. Just add some columns so that we have 3 total. Those are going to be called name, begin, and length. Now I'm going to right click on the rows, add below, add below, add below, and add below so that I have 4 total rows. I'm going to call this one my movie. I'll begin that at 0, and that will have a length of something. We can use an info chop to figure out what the length of the movie is actually going to be. We can do that by getting the length And if we can also grab, well, that's okay. We can use a timeline to get our rate, and then we can use a math to divide these chops. I don't think that's quite right. Just want to divide these chops like this. I'm not sure why. Didn't work, but whatever. So at 60 frames per second, this will have a, is that right? Sorry, I just want to make sure that this is correct. There we go. Okay, so what we need to do is not grab the timeline of our project, but rather grab the sample rate and the length, and then combine these with divide. And I think I can just reorder them like this. Cool. And now, if I select another image, I think I'll use this one of this kid bouncing. We can see that we're updating here. And that's great. So then we want our length. We want that to be a parameter or dynamic, right? So right now I'll just put it at 26.08, but we're going to want to change that later. Well, all right, fuck it. I'm just going to change it now. A chop execute on here on value change. We'll just open this, say if channel.name is equal to length, then op segments, and then we want to grab our row called movie and our column called length. Length dot val equals val. I think this works. And then if we reset our movie back to this, yeah, okay, so now we can see that our length is updating in here. We can then do fade in, have that also begin at 0, and give that a length of 2 seconds. We'll have our title start at 3 seconds and have a length of 5 seconds. And then we'll have our fade out. We'll have that begin at the length of the video minus 2. So we can actually set that up here dynamically by changing this to fade out and this to begin. And then val minus 2. again, if we go back to our other video, so now we can see that our fade out is going to begin 2 seconds before the end, and our length will be 2. Now we can do some work on our timer, so we can drop the segments DAT onto our segments, and then we'll set this to parallel timers, and that means that all of this is going to run at the same time. So we'll have our play mode set to sequential. We probably want our timer fraction 0. That's going to be our movie timer. So when this is greater than 0, we will want to pulse our movie. So we can do that by creating a parent component. So I'll drop all this. I'll customize. Oops, I'm going to add a parameter called start that's a pulse. And then I'm going to drag that parameter onto 1, my movie, and then to my timer. I'm going to change the timer to on done to reinitialize. That will just reset our timer whenever it's done. I guess the resolution's way different for this, so I'm going to go back to my butterfly video and stay there probably. So now what do we need to do? Now we just need to set up our operators with some dynamics from the timer. So I can select timer fraction 0, that's just going to be our movie. So that's fine. We don't actually have to do anything with that. Timer 1, that's going to be our segment 1, which is our fade in. So that means that I want this opacity here to go from 0 to 1 as this timer fraction is going from 0 to 1. But I'm also going to want it to go from 1 to 0 when the timer fraction 2 goes from 1 to 0. So easy to do the first part, and that's just with this. Now if we start, we can see that fade in is working real nice. But our fade out is not going to work. So to do the fade out, what we're actually going to do is use timer fraction 1 and timer fraction 2, and I'm going to use a chop execute. On value change, I'll say I'm going to rename this to my fade in, fade out. And we'll say on value change if channel.name equals fade in, then I want my op level1.par opacity dot val equal to val. And that's because we're going from 0 to 1. Elif, our channel name equals fade out, Then we're going to want that parameter to be 1 minus our value, and that will go from 1 to 0. I'm going to get rid of this, and now if I start, we have a problem. No value called opacity. That is because it should have a lowercase o because it is a built-in parameter, not an uppercase one. If I hit start, we can see that perfect. My fade in is indeed working. And my fade out is also working. However, that fade out was picked. I chose the wrong timer fraction. It should actually be 3. Timer fraction 2 is our title. So maybe that's fine, actually. I'll just grab all of the timer fractions and I will label them all. So I'll say movie, fade in, title, fade out. And then we can use the same chop execute. I'll say elif channel.name. You saw my fade out just happen there, right? Equals title. Then we're going to want to do our op text1 dot font alpha dot par dot font alpha dot val equals, and for this we're going to want the title to fade in over the course of a little bit and then fade out. So if I just have it set to this and reset, this is going to fade in our title. So I actually probably want to have this set to 0 to start so that we can fade in our title, which we can see working there. But then we want to fade out our title. So actually, maybe I'm going to add another row here. I'll call that title in. We'll begin it at 3. We'll last for 1 second. And then I'll say title out will begin at 3 plus 5, 8. And it will last 1 second. Now's a good enough time to parameterize this stuff because we're going to want to change it. So we can say fade in length, float, add, make that default of 3. Note that this is in seconds. Fade out length in seconds, default 3. Title begin. And that is also going to be in seconds, and we'll default that to 5. And then we'll say title length. And we'll default that to 5 as well. So now I have my fade out length, my fade in length, my title begin, and my title length. So I'm going to go create a parameter, chop, and we'll select all but start. No, I guess not. That's fine. We'll select all of these. We're going to have a chop execute. And then what I'm going to do is just set the values of our DAT using these parameters, and then we'll be pretty much done. So if channel.name is equal to fade in length, then we're going to want to take our segments DAT, which we can call up here, s equals op segments, and then we'll want to grab the fade in row and the length column and set the value of that equal to our val. If we have our fade out length, we want that to be fade out and set the length. Perfect. Now I'll copy this and I'll paste it twice. One is going to be title length. And for this, we don't actually put the length directly into our DAT, but we use it to calculate. So we'll say what we're going to do if our title length changes is reset the title out, actually. Yeah, so we'll set the title out begin to be equal to, and so now we will take our title in begin, add to that our value, which is the length of the title, and that will be when our title phase out begins. I guess we can also say title fade in seconds, and default that to 1. Yeah, I'm actually just going to leave it. I don't really feel like doing that, so I'm going to get rid of the title fade. It's fine. And then last is title begin, which we will then say title in, and begin will be set equal to this value. I believe the last thing that we're going to have to do is change this to not be -2, but instead be minus parent.par.fadeInLength.eval. And this way, I believe, we should have our fade in, our titles fading in. Oh, because I forgot to rename all of this. So we have movie, fade in, title in, title out, fade out. Restart. So this text should be set to 0 to start. So if I pulse, our video fades in. but our title does not seem to be working, and that is because we forgot to update this to title in. And then I am also going to have a title out, and this can be 1 minus the value. So we'll start this again. We see that our title fades. Well, okay, so what I need to do is to get rid of that stuttering, what I will need to do is just say elif channel.name is start. Then I'm going to set my op text1 .par.opacity.value is equal to 0. And so that way, when I start everything, my title will be set to 0. Start. That didn't work. Why didn't that work? It has no value opacity. Oh, and that's because it's called font alpha, not boom. So we start, our title is 0, our title fades in. Does our title fade out? Our title fades out, and then we play the rest of our video. Oops. And if I let our video play to the end, it should also fade out. And there you have it. So that is using a timer with a segments DAT to be able to define a nice configurable media player. And to illustrate, I will put a random other video that is shorter, like maybe this one, I think, is shorter. So you can open this instead and take a look. If I have a out, I'll go up a level. I'll look at my null. I guess one thing that I should probably do is just have the title be parameterized because, whoops. So just so you know, Shift and T will take you to this tree view and back. In case that ever happens, I hit it by mistake sometimes. So I have an out, I have my parent parameters. I wanted to drop the title here and then make my title watershed, sure. Pulse. And we can see that things are fading in exactly as we expected. Title fades out, rest of my video plays, and then my video fades out right when it's done. So yeah, working as expected, and I think it is a good piece of functionality to know about. So this was kind of long for a quick tip, but so be it. I think it's an important one. Thank you to all of my Patreon followers. As always, it's really, really helpful. Without that, I would probably have to be like, I don't know, working some job that I don't really want to be able to pay the bills instead of making these tutorials. So again, I just really can't say thank you enough.